Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome.
And from Abuja, good morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, I wonder what people make of what transpired in that public, the Senate Committee, House Committee hearing, as a matter of fact, on management of recovered loot. It's been a matter, it's been an issue for a while. But remember, the AGF did say, in fact, there was a press statement that was released to that effect on behalf of the Attorney General of the Federation, which did say that 4.2 million that was recovered from a return from the UK has been returned to, no, the press release first from the Office of the Attorney General said it had been paid into the federal government coffers ASA immediately. And then they were going to use it for construction of certain things. The same thing, the first tranche that came before this one, remember the argument as to, we should get back to the coffers of the state, because the argument went on and they said, no, it's to the federal government. Only for the people to be told, the country to be told yesterday in this hearing that the money is being paid to Delta State.
Wow. Even before...
Right there before the Attorney General.
Even before this one, there was something that I mentioned yesterday about one of the stories I thought we could chat, which is that, some people were saying that there are certain figures that are not, the House Committee was saying that there are certain figures that were not represented in a report.
Oh, that's a separate one.
Yeah, I'm just saying, ultimately, I mean, my point here is the discordance all over the place. There is a committee that is supposed, an establishment of government that is supposed to manage this recovered funds. The question is, what is their role?
Well, remember the former AFCC chair was also seated right there. Unfortunately, people couldn't see his face for his expressions and body language, as people like to look to these days. Because these were part of the matters that were raised why they said he was removed. They thought, look, how are you managing the recovered assets? And so, speaking about recovered assets, then they asked the accountant general, says, no, it's gone back to Delta State. And people thought the next thing was going to be, AGF, is that the case? Well, you had the press release the other day that said they had been paid into federal government coffers, the previous one too. So, is it this recent tranche or the previous one? Will it be the same thing moving forward? Oh, man.
Well,
just confused.
But it happened in Abuja, so...
Oh, Paul. Are you... Oh, dear.
Mark, we can't hear you.
National Assembly, which I watched very much just like you do on television. That's a real surprise, because, I mean, just a few days ago, the Attorney General of the Federation was on politics today. And you heard him, refute very vehemently or give very... strong reasons as to why, no, the Delta State government cannot receive this money. He says it's a part of the deal that was signed, that it was a part of the agreement and part of the conditions upon which the UK government agreed to send back the money. I still remember Shehu asking him, how is it possible that people who had no hand in terms of how this money came to their country or even how we got the money will dictate terms as to how we, spend the money when it eventually comes back. After all, it's our money. And the Attorney General says, well, if the money was never taken to the UK in the very first place, there would have been no question of them having a say. So it's because this money was taken there, that's why all of this has cropped up. And that's why they have a say in terms of how the money is spent, and that these agreements have to be respected. They cannot be rescinded because, the conditions precedents before we eventually receive those money. So we cannot go back on an agreement. So I'm asking, after all of that elaborate explanation, what happened? Did they threaten to go to court? Was there some underhand dealing? Was there some over-the-table top dealing? I don't know. But gentlemen, in this country, it looks like the more you look, the less you see. And maybe the less you understand. It's back in your court, gentlemen.
The only thing that this says to me, guys, is that, you know, we have establishments, we have agencies, we have structures that we create, and we do not allow them to work.
Is that what it is?
We have an agency that is supposed to manage recovered loot. How come it's the AGF facing the panel?
Accountant General?
We have an...
there was an Accountant General there. There was Attorney General there. They were all...
You know what I'm saying? My point is, there is an agency set up for the specific purpose. If they were doing their jobs, will we need the Attorney General and the Accountant General sitting in that panel?
Well, it's a hearing, so I guess we're here moving forward from that hearing much later. Well, let's delve right into the dailies. I think they might be as interesting as what transpired yesterday with some of the headlines, I might add. But for instance, if you start with the Nigerian Tribune, that's what they focus on. Look at that. £4.2 million Dibori loot returned to Delta, Accountant General says. So that's what Tribune leads with as well. And then you see $633.8 million, 9.709 million pounds recovered so far from Switzerland, island of Jersey, UK, he adds. So there's more. There's more from where, no, not more from where that came from. But there's more, much more than, you know, the 4.2 million. And I think perhaps if you read the story, you may just get to see, okay, so what then happens to all those talk as to this is what the money is going to be used for? Because I remember the first Abacha list too, they said it was going to be used for the construction of those roads. They had been earmarked, and so now we have this one. Anyway, I wonder what Delta State thinks. So, Delta, is the money in your account?
Well, that's another question altogether. But remember that, of course, Delta State government wants to have the money, you know, and
they say they have the money. I mean, the Accountant General
it has been sent to them. So is it the Accountant General of the state now that is not going to say, confirm that we received the alert?
Well, whoever can...
or the Sigma Quest song, I don't get that alert.
No, it's a different kind of different type. Who knows what they will say, because they too were up in arms as to the money belongs to. It came from here, should go back here. So now that this is out there, who knows? They might even respond before you know what's going on. Well, speaking about response, look at what's at the bottom strip of that paper, if you will. No land in South will be ceded to invaders masquerading as herdsmen. Akeredolu. So that's what you see right there. Courts. No, Myra, I'll go again on this one. Count Benue out of your planned grazing reserves, Otom tells presidency. Buhari government not organized, Afenifere. Evacuate all herders from south, CNG tells FG. So, all of these things. But while they're at it, media owners, editors, NUJ offers 5-point action to tackle nation's challenges. So, they also reflect that here. So, you might as well just go ahead and see what that, some of those recommendations are.
New Telegraph this morning is still, well, is also interested in the ban on open grazing, still making the rounds. SANs, others fault presidency's position on governor's powers, challenge parties to approach the courts. Garba Shehu fueling anarchy in Nigeria, says Akeredolu. Count Benue out of grazing reserves plan, Otom tells Buhari. That's also on the front page of the New Telegraph this morning. Begs the question that we've asked, you know, from time to time here. Exactly who has the authority or the right of doing something or legislating about grazing reserves? I remember seeing another story where the governor of Ondo State said that the federal government does not have the powers to legislate on grazing reserves. Again, I guess it's clear there where this is all going to end. The courts, guess we'll wait to see. Stories on pages 2 and 3. Banks to go after debtor states. Not likely to go away anytime soon. CBN debits lenders 120.2 billion naira for CRR default, retains lending rate at 11.5%, abolishes 380 naira per dollar as official rate. So what then is the official rate now? That story is on page 3. Right above the nameplate, FG lures investors, targets $3.7 billion in fresh oil deals, bait lenders to value creation. It's on the front page, continues on the inside page. But this last one is on the bottom strip. Too much TV impacts brain health. That's on page 8. I guess that's something for parents. Make sure children don't spend too much time right there. Okay.
Well, they didn't specify and say children. I mean, too much TV impacts brain health. Last I checked, even adults do have brains, right? So all the couch potatoes too should please take note. Let's look at what Daily Trust has for you on the front page. And that talk about alert is very important because you might have sent somebody money and, you know, the person might just not have received it. Alert is a very good confirmation of having received that money in your account. So it's a very important thing. I will ask the Delta State government, have you received alert? Let's look at what Daily Trust is saying. You're complicit in secession bid, Northern elders tell Southern governors. Say Northerners living in fear in South. Federal government should evacuate herders from South. That's according to CNG. Garba Shehu lacks authority to make policy statements is being credited to the governor of Ondo State, Akere Dolu. Devolve powers to states. Nigeria Press Organization tells federal government. You also see right at the bottom there, tell us where recovered loots are. That's from the Sultan. Yeah, there's just one Sultan, the Sultan of Sokoto. You might want to look at a number of other stories on the front page there. States must pay their bailout funds, CBN insists. I'm sure the governors are looking at Governor Obaseki and saying, see what you cost. See what you cost. But hey, you might want to see why the CBN continues to insist. It's a page 21 read. And look at that. 2023, PDP, APC, bicker over burning of INEC offices. That's on page 37. A number of stories at the bottom there. COVID-19, Africa needs vaccine equity to aid recovery. And you also see this one. IPOB hires new PR firm to pursue cause in 300 million naira deal. Yeah, that story is quite telling. They're pursuing firms to lobby for them outside the shores of the country. Who knows what results might come out of that? Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
Blueprint next, and they have the same, something similar. Open grazing, that's the theme of what they report on. We will no longer tolerate attacks on herders, NEF warns. Blame governors, selfish politicians for rising crisis. Forum open to citizen-driven national dialogue to end insecurity. Others condemns attack on security agents, institutions. Advised Buhari to pay more attention to national concerns. So, there you go. Well, they equally have that PDP, APC bicker over attacks on INEC facilities, you know, that's also making the rounds. But look, whatever happens, elections must hold. Look, we've seen the scenario before. We know what, in the height of Boko Haram in the northeast, elections held. So that's a precedent anyway, which can't be wiped out. So I don't know how else anyone else wants this to be viewed. Well, yeah, at the bottom strip as well, you see NPAN, NUJ, NPO to FG. Address insecurity, cost of governance, restructuring. So professionals are weighing in as well. Once Oronsanya report implemented, PIB passed. Don't forget Electoral Act 2. Well, that's also of equal importance. Lots of people waiting to see that one while they go about with this amendment of the Constitution, which I think in one of the dailies there, Professor Oyebode was saying you can't merge forged documents. He was telling National Assembly. So, and But in the meantime, who knows? People, wherever they are, should pay attention to what's going on out there. You need to, at least, whichever way, cast your many bread upon the waters. You never can tell what you might find out in many days. That's Blueprints this morning.
Okay, the Leadership newspaper talks about insecurity. Publishers, stakeholders, warn of imminent implosion. Find the story on page 4 of the Leadership newspaper this morning. Blame current situation on high cost of governance, flamboyant lifestyle of politicians. Who's saying that? The inside pages has details. Seek devolution of powers, civil service reforms, state police. As arson killings escalate in Southeast. That story you find on page 4 of the Leadership newspaper this morning. Oh yes, this one also like a reply from the governor of Ondo State to the presidency. You can't make policy on open grazing. Akeredolu replies presidency. So, I guess that's the, well, he's an SAN, former NBA president, so he should know. Count Benway out of grazing reserves plan. That story is on the front page, continues on page 7. And right above the main story, Children's Day. UNICEF students canvass protection of child's rights. That story is on page 4 of the Leadership newspaper this morning. Okay.
Well, let's take a look at the Vanguard for you. Panic in Ebonyi. Suicide bomber. Suicide bomber in parentheses there. Blows self to pieces. That's what's on the front page of the Vanguard for you. Suicide bomber made the attempt to enter Amaizu Amangbala Primary School. That's according to a witness. No suicide bombing. Ebonyi government. Police. Umahi bans public gatherings, processions. Pandef, MBF react. Gunmen go haywire in Enugu, Imo. Asaba declaration. Assert your powers to keep Nigeria united. NEF tells Buhari. It's on page 8 of the paper. You have a number of other stories. When this controversy broke yesterday, it was very difficult to know what to believe. But for those who saw the video making the rounds, there'll be huge questions as to, was it a suicide bomber? Was it truly an accident? You know, who's telling? Is anyone trying to cover up anything? I don't know. But you might want to read details on page 5. Look at this one. Okonjo Kagame, others list success factors for after post-pandemic economic development. That's also there. Open grazing ban. Southern governors Clark or Tom MBF blast Garba Shehu. I mean, there are a host of riders which I wouldn't go into. Plenty of them. You find all the details on page 7. Sadly, Mr. and Mrs. is not so clear on my front page of Vanguard. So sorry, I won't be taking Mr. and Mrs. this morning. But I'll flip to the back page and look at what Vanguard Sports has for you. Onachu scoops 2 awards in Belgium. That's also there. Olise hails him. England named 33-man provisional Euro 2020 squad. And look at that. Europa League final. Villarreal versus Man United. Chukwueze out. Well, for the sports lover, they have all the details for you on the back page in Vanguard Sports.
Take a look at Daily Times next, then. Or is it The Guardian? Which one's coming up next? We're waiting on you guys. Let's see what you got. Okay, take a look at Daily Times right there. Reps query handling of $23 million, 2.75 billion naira by AGF and NPC. So, there you go. That's the big one right there. That's the big lead on the front page there. So I think that's just the key focus. That's Daily Times this morning.
Look at Nigerian News Direct very quickly. Usually interested in the economic side of things. Stagflation. Well, if you're hearing it for the first time, there it is. MPC orders CBN banks on higher export earning measures. Recommends higher consumption investment. Retains 11.50%. NPR, 27.50% CRR. Stories on page 21 of the paper this morning. And so many other stories that you will find interesting on the front page. Markwe.
Well, let's quickly look at The Guardian for you then. A burden of external loans increases as CBN adopts market-led FX rate. That's also on the front page. The experts express worry over rising debt, doubts government ability to meet obligations. It's like SAP. Let's first address macroeconomic challenges, says Adi. Emefiele wants foreign borrowing replaced with diaspora bond. That's also on the front page of The Guardian. I don't know why it's not popping up. As CBN retains MPR at 11.5%. You have a number of other stories at the bottom. You're wrong. Governors, lawyers tackle presidency on open grazing. Akeredolu wants president's aide to desist from being a Jean Provocateur. That's also there. Afenifere YCE Clark denounced president's position. Mieti Allah restates support for open grazing ban. So it's interesting to see the stance of a group of herders saying, look, we don't support the ban. I mean, we support the ban on open grazing. Nigeria to earn 320 billion Naira from NNPC Bonga PSC deal. That's also there. A number of other stories right on top of the nameplate. Delta gets 4.2 million Ibori loot is also there. A sad one. Cholera kills 20 in Bauchi. 302 people hospitalized. They're all on the front page of The Guardian.
So there you go. That is it. We'll look at some of the dailies here this morning. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
Certainly these issues to give us serious concern, no doubt. For you to sleep and, well, wake up this morning and not being sure whether or not you're going to see the next day, it definitely is something disconcerting. And what happened in Plateau State is definitely something we want to give attention to. What is the position of the police on this? We've heard the side of the representatives of the police. Was the police done, or what did the police do? You remember that there was that leaked memo, so to speak, to which the police PRO responded and said people should, go about their normal duties. That there is
leaked.
Well, at least that's the information that we got. That the first PRO said that people should go about their duties without any fears.
Let's get across to the Commissioner of Police in Plateau State, Mr. Edward Igbuka, who joins us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, having seen all of these stories, it's huge questions everywhere. And then perhaps you could start by telling us, what's going on? Is the police overwhelmed with these killings going on?
Definitely not. Definitely not. First of all, good morning. First of all, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me. The police is definitely not overwhelmed. I heard your colleague talking about the refusal by the first PRO, and that's exactly the situation. Because whoever is saying that these attacks have anything to do with that intelligence that was sent to us and went viral, unfortunately, is being economical with the truth. Because in the past couple of weeks, the command and the other security agencies and the state government have been trying to manage skirmishes between locals and headers in just north, just south, Bassa local government areas, and to some extent in Riom local government area. In some of the instances in the past 2-3 weeks, some headers have been killed, 6 of them. Hence, it's suspected that these attacks and the attacks on in the 2 separate communities 2 nights ago on Monday night, which is very, very unfortunate and a dastardly barbaric act, is suspected to be a reprisal attack. That's the position. The investigations are geared in that direction, and we are still asking members of the public for any useful information. Though we have some leads, we are working closely with some community leaders, and on both sides, and we have already some names of some of those that perpetrated this dastardly act.
Did the police have intelligence, prior information that this was going to happen?
Like I said, there have been skirmishes between both parties, the locals and the headsmen. And if you've been following happenings in Plateau, you'll find that once there are things like this, there are usually reprisals. So to that extent, the police, was anticipatory of this kind of incident. But, we are operating in a very vast area. And then there's an extent to which you can effectively cover all these areas.
So that goes back to the question my colleague asked the other time. If the area is so wide, is the police then overwhelmed in being able to contain because of the wideness of the space, as you said?
These incidents don't happen regularly. These incidents don't happen frequently. In fact, in the past 1 year, we have not recorded this number of casualties in any attack. But once there's an attack of any of the parties, there are usually reprisals. And where the perpetrators usually pick soft targets to hit. So to that extent, we are not overwhelmed. Mind you, you have on ground here so many other outfits. You have the Operation Safe Haven, which are sectorized in the state. Recently, the community policing is in place, and we have members of government, leaders in government, the permanent secretary, security advisors, Operation Rainbow, driving this thing. So it's not only the police; it's we are working in a perfect synergy. So we're not overwhelmed at all.
So if you say the community policing initiative is active in Plateau State, how come this happened in this community and, we couldn't get ahead of it?
Let me give you the scenario. Once one of the parties is attacked, the other party will pick a soft target, like the case of Key, and even in Dong. The people didn't even know about it. It was their tribesmen in another part of the plateau, close to them, in a neighboring local government, that had issues with this ethnic. And probably because they were less prepared, they were taken unawares.
Well, speaking about arrest, we had the representative of Plateau State in the House of Reps. He was on the program yesterday. He had some concerns, just like everybody else will. We'd like you to have a listen to what he said.
Since 2001 till date, you cannot handpick one person that has been convicted or is in jail today as a result of the killings on the plateau or other parts of the Middle Belt. So lack of justice. Once there is no justice, once there is no kind of enforcement that somebody must be held responsible, then definitely the person that usually perpetrates such acts will continue. Because no single person has been convicted as a result of the killings on the plateau. Single. So either in the court of law or that this person has been sentenced to 5-10 years in jail because as a result of the killings. So lack of justice, definitely, because the people that have been killed, I always say that the people that have been killed every day seek for justice. But what they usually get is political peace. So if we have sustainable political peace for a long time, you always have this kind of attacks will come and go, come and go. You give it to the STF or the security or whatever. Every day they bring in different worrying factors. They bring in the Fulani headsmen, discuss peace, bring in this one, discuss peace. But I always say that any peace on a tea table without justice to what has happened behind, then definitely it will go, well, they will not do anything for us. And they will continue. So lack of justice has led us to where we are today.
Is he right?
No. You know why I said no? I've just been in this command for a year, and he's talking about since 2001. And I can assure you that many cases have been prosecuted. This can be verified. So I don't know where he's getting his facts from. Yes, I might say that conviction might be a bit difficult because, you know, in the standard of law, you have to prove these matters beyond reasonable doubt. But where there are suspicion, people have been arrested, people have been investigated. Until today, people are still being arrested. So I don't know where he got that information from.
Which cases are you currently prosecuting on this particular herdsman killings?
There's a matter that happened in KVOM. KVOM is near the Institute of Strategic Studies. We have made some arrests. There are a number of them on both sides, both with the locals and the headsmen. There are a number of them, but I can clearly remember that one. We have some suspects in the case, and it's being prosecuted. And mind you that these are issues of homicide, and it's not done overnight.
Of this current matter, has anybody been arrested?
We have information, of course, I will divulge them now. We have information and we are confident that we are going to make arrests. And we are determined to ensure that this does not occur. As I speak to you, there is massive deployment of the police and the military personnel from Operation Safe Haven and the 3rd Division garrison in Jos in all the affected areas as we speak. Calm has been restored, just enjoying the good people and the residents of Plateau State to remain law-abiding and go about their lawful activities without fear.
Well, Commissioner Ibuka, a few questions are just twirling in my head. First, you say that the police is not overwhelmed, that you did have some intelligence that this sort of attack was going to happen because there had been an attack before now. One, can you give details of the attack that happened before now, which already put you on the alert for this type of happening? That's one. And then two, you know, the communities where you suspected that these attacks were going to happen on, were they put on alert?
Yeah, in the past 2-3 weeks, like I said, some herders, about 6 of them have been killed in Kuru community at Bassa and some part of Bak and Ladi. In the past 2 weeks, we've recorded 6 incidents of killing of herdsmen. And part of the strategy I have directed my DPOs and area commanders to use is to ensure that at all times, once incidents like this happen, the communities are called together and warned. I tell you, in one instance, the local government chairman and the DPO went and warned members of the community. And they simply rejected it. That was an unfortunate incident. So there's an extent to which you can go. You just keep, you know. Once we get information, we share it with every member of the community.
Because part of the information, I mean, part of the information that came from this community that suffered the attack was that they had not attacked any herders in their community. However, the police knows that you know, usually when this type of thing happens, when herders are killed in another community, it is another community that knew nothing about the attack that bears the brunt of whatever happened in communities that are sometimes far away from them. So if this is the case, what new strategy is the police adopting to ensure that people who do not know anything about, you know, innocent people who do not know anything in another village do not suffer for what was allegedly done in another village?
I lost you a few minutes after. I can't hear.
I was saying that the pattern of attacks we have noticed is that oftentimes when herdsmen are killed in one village, oftentimes the reprisals do not go back to the same village where these killings were done. They go to other villages that know nothing about, you know, these attacks. And this is now a repeated pattern of some sort. I'm sure that the security agencies are aware of that. If this is the case, how is the police changing strategy to ensure that innocent villagers who know nothing about attacks that have happened elsewhere do not suffer the brunt for what you know will be reprisals?
This Dastardly Act, like others sometime before them, we've made efforts in the sense, you know, that they're a bit technical. Let me give you an instance. In the Dong issue, in the Dong village, the people that had the problem with the headsmen were Irigwe community. And part of the Irigwe community is in Dong community. And when these headers came to attack, they went and picked suspects where you had Irigwe natives living in that Dong community. So you can see, but we have always encouraged dialogue as opposed to conflict. In a week here, the command has over 7-8 meetings with various parties in different areas of the plateau. We encourage dialogue as opposed to conflict because we appreciate the fact that people differ and need to find a common ground to understand themselves. So that is just it. We just have to agree to live together.
Attacks in Riom. What about the attacks in Riom?
It was on the same night. The attacks in Riom, the same thing. The boundary, I was there yesterday and on Monday, the boundary between Riom and Barkin-Ladi, where this, first of all, the header was killed in Barkin-Ladi, then where the place that was attacked in Riom is less than 500 meters, just at the boundary. Can you understand that?
I can understand that. I mean, I've been to Plateau and I know that Riom is on the entrance to between Jos North and Jos South. You know, that little entrance. Barkin-Ladi is where the airport is. Exactly. However, they're clearly delineated. So when you say that it's 500 meters to the boundary, Riom is not Barkin-Ladi. If attacks happen in Barkin-Ladi and Riom is where the attack happened and people of Riom know nothing about it, the question is, what strategies are you adopting to ensure that people who know nothing about attacks that have happened in other places do not bear the brunt?
Apart from intelligence, gathering and execution, we have deployment, and you can deploy as much as your capacity. We have support from the force headquarters. We have 2 units of PMF here. But you know that Plateau has had some peace in the past 1 year. So some of the units from Plateau have been moved elsewhere to take care of situations there. So with this coming up now, we are calling back some of our units to Plateau for more effective deployment. But I keep saying that the only way out is for these parties to speak. Because some of these headers have lived in these communities for close to a century. We need to keep talking.
Okay.
The state government...
It goes back again to what the member of the House of Representatives was saying about political peace. I mean, he made reference to the fact that, you know, dialogue is the way to go. But at the end of the day, if nobody is arrested for this and, you know, perpetrators are not brought to book on either side, with those who allegedly killed herders and those who, you know, went to carry out reprisals in return, then this is what we'll keep having, because the communities will know nothing about these attacks on other communities and are unjustly attacked, will always feel aggrieved when nothing is done by the authorities to bring those who brought that grief upon them to book. Did you hear me, Mr. Commissioner?
Yeah, I got some of it, but I want to assure you, in this particular case, I mentioned community policing because the drivers of community policing are some of the leaders in Plateau here. And it appears that the indigents find it easier to divulge information to them. So I have got a number of information concerning this particular attack. So I can assure you that in this instance, justice will be done. We will get as many people as possible that were involved in this. They will not get away with it. That's an assurance I can give.
How do you intend to do that when it would seem already that aspersions are already being cast on the police? I mean, if you listen to that report, there are those who were saying, oh, the police came and picked the bullet, the shells of the bullets that were expended in the attacks, and that they left the bodies of the people. Oftentimes, there's been a distrust on the part of the people for state authorities, especially the security agencies, whom they feel sometimes look away. If this is a situation with trust in these communities, how do you intend to get over that and do what you ought to do as an agency of government?
I didn't get the last part. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I
can hear you clearly, Mr. Commissioner.
Oh, okay. I got part of what you said, but you can understand that passions are high. I mean, people woke up and saw their loved ones dead, injured. I can understand that. I'm sure at heart, the gentleman that spoke doesn't mean. He knows. Immediately we got the information, we got in there. The DPO called me. I moved him in less than 30 minutes. But because of, in order to avoid ambush, which had happened in some cases, she had to wait for an armored personnel vehicle to come in for them to move in. That could have caused a little delay. We have always worked passionately here. I can speak for myself, particularly under my watch. We have always worked passionately with the native, and they know. So I can give it to anybody commenting this way because passions are high, but we're not going to deal with sentiments.
Do you think, I mean, sentiment, you heard his comment and it was bordering on distrust or the motive as to why the shells were taken away. Can you explain why that happened? Is that also part of the investigation process?
What was taken away?
The bullet shells were taken away.
Of course. If you get to the scene of crime, you have to try and comb it. That's one of the things for the ballisticians to test. How else will you do your investigation without doing that? Like I said, there's a lot of passion and sentiments going up in here, and then I don't blame them. You know, we understand that. You know, even the bodies, when we tried to move them, they resisted until the state, the SSG came and then pacified them and we moved the bodies.
Well, I am sure that you have heard, I mean, this is not the first time that these attacks are happening on the plateau. And I know that you know that trust is always one of the issues that is deficient between the people and the security agencies. How do you intend to get over that particular problem, the issue of trust?
what I heard last was the issue of trust. Now, like I told them in a meeting I had with the indigents yesterday, I said, listen, the state government is yours. The leaders in government are yours. Over 65%, 7% of my officers on ground in the plateau are indigents of plateau. So, I don't know. Well, all over the world, the police have problem of issues of trust. But for me, and in this plateau, they know we keep an open door policy. We listen to everyone. When I came here, I said to them that my brief from the Inspector General of Police, which is still my brief now, is that we don't know any communities. I mean, we don't know Fulani, we don't know Irigwe, we don't know Birom. What we know are those perpetrating crimes, and we go after them. So all we need is cooperation from the public and the natives, which we are having. But like I said, this issue, we've had peace here for quite a long time. This issue just happened, that tempers are high.
Commissioner, the killings, the attacks, that you made reference to concerning Irigwe community, is that the one that occurred, that was reported to the Bassa Police Division about theft and cruelty to animals, which occurred on the 18th of this month?
Exactly.
Which some were recovered and then handed back to the Deputy Chairman of Mieti Allah in the state?
Exactly. I didn't even think of the cruelty to the animal because more serious issues involved. On the 8th of this month, 81 cattle were rustled. The police managed to get into recover some, and then 15 were killed. That's part of it.
Can we then say that because that happened just a few days ago, and then this occurred? So these persons who had reported the matter to the police, after the police told them, calm down, we'll sort this out, will they be suspects in this matter?
No. It's possible, but these are far apart communities. And apart from that, like I told you, in the past 2 to 3 weeks, we've recorded the death of 6 headsmen in various communities within Jos North, Jos South, Bassa, and back in Nadi.
Okay, well, so just give us a few minutes. We'll just go to break, but we'll come back and conclude some of these matters in a moment. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. Well, Commissioner, the people you say have been arrested, are they Nigerians or are they foreigners?
Arrested in which incident? The one I mentioned?
Yes, even the recent ones too.
In this particular incident, nobody has been arrested yet, though we have information, we have intelligence and some names have come to us. But in the past, I don't think in my cell, I don't have any foreign person we are investigating in respect of this issue. I don't.
So, but what do you think, from your security perspective about this narrative that we have a lot of foreign herders here who are causing mayhem?
On the plateau, on the plateau, like I said earlier, the herders have been in these communities in this state for so many years. So I believe it's, if there are any reprisal, it's from them, it's from the youth. But you can't rule off the fact that, mercenaries could be used. There is a fluid movement all over the world now, like we are witnessing in the Northeast. I have no evidence. You can't rule it out.
Authorized to bear AK-47? Where do they get them from?
I didn't get that.
Are they authorized to bear AK-47?
How can they? Our directives are clear. The president has even said it. anyone bearing prohibited firearms should be dealt with decisively. And I want to use this opportunity to warn that our personnel have been positioned in strategic locations within these troubled areas, and they have clear instructions to deal decisively with anyone fomenting trouble, particularly anyone seen bearing prohibited firearms.
Well, there's word coming through that Agindi Down Base along Rukuba Road is under siege. Is the command aware of this?
Yes, I just got a sit rep. There's no problem. We are on ground there. The garrison commander, I spoke with him. He's there. And mind you, that is near where the military base is. So they're on top of the situation. Nothing can happen there.
When you say you're on top of it, does it mean that those who are causing the mayhem are being arrested, or your men are there for now and will be there for a while?
Yesterday afternoon, there was a conflict between the youths on both sides at that axis, and then we took care of the situation. I have not spoken with my area commander because he walked up till night to know whether arrests have been made.
Okay, so as things turn out now, for those communities who just feel that the response time of the police is a big concern for them, what's going on to improve that?
Well, I have assurance from His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Plateau State, right, Simon Lalong, who has been very supportive by me, that we are expecting vehicles and communication sets in less than 2-3 weeks. I'm sure of that. I was assured about that in the last security meeting we had just a couple of weeks ago. So that will make us.
But is there an end in sight, Mr. Commissioner, to these attacks? Well, you have said earlier that the Plateau has had relative peace for a while, and then this happened. It only begs, the question of when the next one just could happen. You heard the representative of the place also telling us, that there's the likelihood. I mean, if these things continue to happen, it's just what they call political peace. And if all we have is political peace, I understand that he's frozen on us, and hopefully when he returns, we'll put the question to him. So if all we have is political peace, it means that perhaps just the political leaders that are just trying to patch, or to use your term, papering over the cracks, for a while. But if that continues in that regard and people do not feel a sense of justice done, and there is an issue. So, Mr. Commissioner, is there an end in sight to this? I'm considering the likelihood or the possibility of engagement with the people to a large extent that will be sustainable. You said the other time that, when you attempted to engineer peace with the people, that they rejected it. That only speaks to the possibility of either lack of trust of the police, between the police and the people, of anything, any initiative whatsoever that could come from the police, or the fact that the people do not feel that they have been given justice, and consequently they will reject anything else until they feel that their interest is protected sustainably.
Well, if they reject the peace initiative of the police, would they also reject the peace initiative of the government? The governor in February, mid-February, constituted a peace committee, and then where all the leaders gathered and talked about that. It's just from my own perspective, just like Nigeria, Plateau State is. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. From my own perspective, just like Nigeria, Plateau State is an ethnic, multi-religious society. And the reality is that we must come to terms with that. The more of the issue is distrust between the warring parties, not necessarily between them and the government agencies, but between the warring parties. And the point is that we must come to the reality that we are in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society, and learn to have peaceful interactions and with each other. That's just the solution. I believe it will come, but it's work in progress.
Okay, one more thing before you go. Speak to this matter where they say, look, time and again, when some of these perpetrators are arrested, that along the way, when it seems as if things have died down, they're usually released by the police authorities and handed back the weapons.
Not under my watch. Policemen have been killed in this incident. Are we handing over the weapons to them to kill boss again? It's not under my watch. The judiciary, I mean, you know what the law is, where you now have the Administration of Justice, Criminal Justice Act. It's painstaking. The onus of proof in a criminal case is beyond reasonable doubt. So sometimes you don't even have enough evidence. Sometimes you use what we call the judge's rule to do massive arrests and begin to screen. You can only prosecute someone when you have enough evidence to prosecute. So I have never witnessed it. It has never happened under my watch. I have never seen any senior officer give instruction to that. It could happen, but I've never witnessed it. How will you, a criminal? A criminal is the most dangerous person against the law enforcement agencies first, not to talk of even the community.
Speaking about motive, I don't know if you saw or heard one of the members of the Plateau State House of Assembly in some of the reports we had said that the motive for some of this killing is land grab. They want to forcefully grab the land of those people.
That's the thing. Sentiments. I spoke with some Fulanis that ran out of Irigwe, and they are telling me, look, they were born in this land, they grew up in this land, now they've run away from their land. So both sides, sentiments. I'm not aware of that. I mean, I wouldn't know because I'm not aware of that.
All right, then. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, the only way out is for us to. When you talk to both parties, you see that they are expressing sentiments. That's a good argument. So it's just an issue of coming to terms and dealing, interacting peacefully with each other. The funny thing is that I go around Plateau State. There is more than enough land. I am telling you, everywhere. So, I can only talk what concerns me in law enforcement. I can't dabble into politics or social or cultural issues.
Oh, yes, indeed, and they'll look to you to ensure that it comes across from the command and enforce that no one is above the law. But we do thank you for your time this morning, Mr. Edward Opoko, Commissioner of Police in Plateau State. Thank you, sir. All right, so we're going to turn our attention right away to another matter, which, well, I'm not saying it's going to say directly related, but it's got to do with some of those comments and resolutions by the southern governors. Remember, they spoke about open grazing. There was a response from the presidency as well. There was a statement that was released. As a matter of fact, we might also just go ahead and just bring you some of them, maybe a point or two, where the presidency said to be taking some actions to end this recurring crisis between farmers and herders. And he says that he is committed to ending the conflict and also ensure that a sustained and lasting solution is proffered to the problem of killer herdsmen.
Well, part of the specific measures set to be approved by the President is to adopt the recommendations of a report by the Minister of Agriculture, Alhaji Sabun Anono, which the President signed off on in April before the actions of the Southern Governors Forum, which placed a ban on open grazing. Now, of course, this is in a statement by his media aide that it is very clear there was no solution offered from the resolutions of the governors to the herder-farmer clashes.
Well, here's the thing, he also says that citizens of the southern states, and indeed citizens of all states of Nigeria, have a right to expect their elected leaders and representatives to find answers to challenges of governance and rights, and not to wash their hands of hard choices. But And then it goes on. So that's a statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Gabasho. So we'll take a moment and then we'll be back and get a guest in to speak on the matter. Don't go away.
In the southeast, you don't have cattle routes. But in the north, we have cattle routes. And so nobody is going to say ban, open grazing, in some areas in the north where there are cattle routes, where they move constitutionally from one point to the other. But in the south, there is no cattle route. And so for you to move from one point to the other, you have to move through farms. You have to move through, population, dense areas, and this is not very good. And that's what the southern governors and of course Southeast in particular are saying. Let's go back to our traditional method of relationship. We will no longer allow you to take your cattle from one local government to the other. And the implication is that these foreign headers also come in terms of mobile headers with AK-47. So that is a source of conflict. So anybody that is saying that there should be no ban on this thing is, on the other hand, saying that, look, these killings will continue. And that's what gave birth to ESN. Whether we support it as governors, we don't. But the people tend to support it because of the foreign headers that pretend that they are raiding cattle and then they are killing. And in my own village, a white man was kidnapped in my village that's doing construction, by these foreign headers. And we've encouraged the federal government, let's treat this, cattle raiding as a business. Take money from the federation account and develop ranches where there are designated ranches, especially in the north. And the northern governors are willing, but it's been frustrated.
Emeka Okpoko joins us this morning to take this further. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So now, you've heard a lot about this. First of all, what was your initial impression to first the southern governors and then the response of the presidency?
Thank you very much. My initial impression to the Southern Governor's resolution is to even hail them in the sense that I am satisfied, I am impressed, I am convinced that their resolution is in tandem with the law. It is in tandem with legality, it's in line with the law. Therefore, I was quite very impressed. I said, this is good. Of course, you know that amongst them is a senior advocate of Nigeria. So I see him also being very instrumental in making such ingredients that will match the law. So I was quite very impressed. And I think that their resolution is perfectly within the ambit of our law. It is totally constitutional. It is legal. And I'm very happy with that.
Okay, but then there is that response of the Office of the President. The presidency also released a response to it. First the Attorney General and then the presidency. How did you receive those?
Well, with all respect, I also read the pronouncement of the Attorney General. and then the comparison he made of cattle herdsman business and that of spare parts business. And of course, you know that if you look at the pronouncement, perhaps he made that in a hurry without actually looking into or doing a further deeper thinking before he had into that conclusion. I think if you look at the law, you will see that nobody is even preventing the herdsmen from moving around. It's not really about the human beings moving around. It's about the nature of the business. It's about the movement of the cattle from one place to the other. It's about the destruction of the cattle. It is about what they now do in the course of their business. So when you talk of all the constitutional provision, it deals with human beings. For instance, when you talk of freedom of movement as enshrined in the Constitution, they are dealing with fundamental human rights. Human. But in this circumstance, the cattle are not human. Nobody will just go and pick a herdsman if he's genuinely moving around like any normal person. There's no problem with that. But
oh dear. Well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get him back. You know, I think we're already going into the terrain of law now, taking us through exactly what are the constitutional provisions.
That's why it's amazing to look at that, because I mean, yes, it's well, you know, incidentally, lawyers usually have different interpretations of the law. That's why you then have the courts, where the courts of law, where they then settle some of these matters. But yeah, interestingly, he was speaking about some of these matters, which when we get that line back, he'll speak on them.
Well, he said earlier he was trying to respond to his assessment of what the Attorney General of the Federation, who also is a senior advocate of Nigeria, said. Perhaps we should take a listen to that.
It's about constitutionality within the context of the freedoms expressed in our Constitution, enshrined in our Constitution. Can you deny a right of a Nigerian? For example, it's as good as saying, perhaps maybe the northern governors coming together to say that they prohibit spare parts trading in the north. Does it hold water? Does it hold water for a northern governor to come and state expressly that he now prohibits spare parts trading in the north? If you are talking of a constitutionally guaranteed right, the better approach to it is to, perhaps, you have spoken earlier about the constitutional amendment, is to go back to ensure the Constitution is amended. The Constitution, freedom and liberty of movement, among others, is established by the Constitution. If by an inch you want to have any compromise over it, the better approach is to go back to the National Assembly. Should be prohibited.
Well, so you want to respond to that very quickly. You were actually responding to that, earlier. We'll still get to the constitutional amendment part, but go ahead, please.
The constitutional guaranteed rights are for human beings. That's liberty, freedom of movement. That movement is for human beings, not the cattle. There's no constitutional guarantee for movement of cattle from one place to the other, or to the other. So you cannot, and then of course, if the Federal Attorney General believes strongly that what he's saying is within the ambit of the law, why not he goes to the court? Let him go to the Supreme Court, take all his days to the Supreme Court, and then let the Supreme Court take a decision on it one way or the other. But you cannot say that movement of cattle has anything to do with a constitutionally guaranteed right. It is not.
Well, we'll definitely will get him back.
Chapter 4. They come under Chapter 4. They come under Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Such enshrined rights are not for human. Are only for human beings, not for cattle.
But if you look at the text of that statement from the presidency, which says it is equally true that the announcement is of questionable legality, that's the Southern governors now, given the constitutional right of all Nigerians to enjoy the same rights and freedoms within every one of our 36 states and FCT, regardless of the state of their birth or residence. So, what do you say is the thinking behind this? Because if they say it is of questionable legality, it is true that it is of questionable legality.
It is not true. You see, when you talk of legality, what is legality? It is all about doing things in accordance with the law, doing things in compliance with the law, following the law. So how can you look at, for instance, what the herdsmen now are doing and never think that whatever they are doing is in accordance with the law? It is not at all. And then, how can you then look at the situation and now say, oh, the decision by the Southern governors, mind you, the Southern governors are the elected representatives of the people. The person making that pronouncement is not even an elected person. The pronouncement of the aides of the minister of the president are not from unless there is a clear evidence that there was a direct instruction from the president that they are acting officially from him. Minus that, the governors are the chief law officers of the states, and the governors are the elected representatives of the people of their various states. So they have a superpower compared to the aides of the president. Then, it is also not an issue for somebody to sit in his office and make pronouncement. It is beyond that. If you are satisfied or convinced that what they did is not in order, go to the court. Let the court make a pronouncement. On that, the Supreme Court is open. Matters of such nature, the Supreme Court had original jurisdiction to listen to the federal government against the states. Therefore, you cannot say it is not legal. It is legal. As long as what decision they have taken has no provision in the Constitution that you can point at to say that this contradicts this provision, this runs riot with this provision, this is in conflict with the philosophy or the jurisprudential input of this provision. As long as you are unable to show that, you cannot say that that is not legal. Legality is not something that is within the whims and caprices of anybody. It's not even an intellectual imagination. It is a reality. It is a hard issue, hard facts. So you cannot sit down there and say, oh, there's no legality. There is. Because if you look at the governors, being the custodian, being the chief law officers of the state, they are entitled to protect their people. The whole essence of the government is to ensure the safety and security of the people they represent. If a government is unable to make provisions for safety and security, what then is the government doing? And how do you even expect national development or development of such states or regions once the government is unable to maintain safety and security of such places? Now, looking at what happened, you can see that the whole reason is because the governors want to ensure of the safety of their places. Mind you, even by the Land Use Act, which has its own anchor or flow from the Constitution, the governors are also have strong powers in relations to or in relationship with anything that pertains to land. They even regulate physical planning of the land. So can you now, what I'm trying to say is that I do not know what law you can come up with to say, oh, this is in breach of this law. You cannot. If you look at the entire Constitution, look at the entire gamut of the Constitution, look at the tenets, you will see no provision that you can say, oh, this resolution contradicts, attacks, or is in conflict with. Both in terms of pure fact, the Constitution as it is in letters and philosophy or jurisprudence behind the provisions of this constitution.
All right, Mr. Boko, we'll go to break, but we'll equally get your perspectives about the points of law regarding some of the other recommendations or some of other recommendations of the Southern governors in that meeting. Don't go away.
The Channels 24 app means you'll always be in touch with the news. Get the latest local and international stories on the go. And there's our social media platforms for news from around the world. Watch the news live and play videos that matter to you. You can also check the eyewitness section to report events around you. Just click on the eyewitness icon and follow the instructions to upload your content. Channels 24 app, the news at your fingertips.
With subdued world economic outlook, coupled with trade tension and climate change, Africa is not insulated in all these, as globalization brings about interconnectivity of the world economy. On Business Incorporated, we answer those mind-boggling questions and dissect the issues as it affects you. That's not all. We also follow the numbers and what informs investor decisions in the global financial market. Every weekday at this time.
It is a meeting that cuts across party affiliations. Governors in the southern region of the country are here to discuss issues of national interest, security, economy, and health. 13 governors and 2 deputy governors are in attendance, with the exception of governors of Osun and Cross River states. The governors go into a closed-door meeting which lasts for about 4 hours. After that, Governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, briefs the press on the resolutions reached, part of which is the long-standing debate on restructuring.
Progress of the nation requires that urgent and bold steps be taken to restructure the Nigerian Federation, leading to the evolution of state police, review of revenue formula in favor of subnationals, and creation of other institutions which legitimately advance our commitment to and practice of true federalism. The meeting recommended that in view of the widespread agitation among our various peoples for greater inclusiveness in existing governance arrangement, the federal government should convoke a national dialogue as a matter of urgency.
On account of the security challenges brought about by farmer herder crisis, Governor Rotimi Akeredolu has this to say.
Caution of armed herders, criminals and bandits in the southern part of the country has presented a severe security challenge such that citizens are not able to live their normal lives, including pursuing various productive activities, leading to a threat to food supply and general security. Consequently, the meeting resolved that open grazing of cattle be banned across southern Nigeria.
Yeah, welcome back. Now, having listened to that, what legal provisions can be activated to the extent that it will lead to state police, as the governors did resolve?
Thank you. Yeah, for me, there are ways of doing it. First is that we know that the states have, or rather the states have been, for now, making legislations permitting security network, other security networks or frameworks, in their various states. We also know that some states call it vigilante. that is vote. For me, that is still a step in the right direction, that they make legislations or laws creating such things in their various states, creating vigilante or other security networks in their various states. Now, you also know that the police is an issue that comes strictly under the exclusive legislative list. That is, it is only the federal government that has the power to legislate on police. However, there are ways by which one believes that this can still be done. There could be a devolution of power, of police power, to the extent that the states can be given powers to regulate certain parts of it, certain parts of the police power, by way of devolution, so that there will be a statutory backing of that. That way, even the state police can come within that ambit. That is, powers will be statutorily given to such states to, within their own enclave, create police, as long as the state police, as long as they do not run in conflict with the police as created under the Constitution, as created or rather as empowered by the Police Act, I think Section 4. The power is there. As long as you do a devolution of such power, the states can actually rely or anchor on it to create police, create their own state police.
Okay, it looks as if it's frozen about. I mean, naturally, you need to just find out. Look, does that then suggest that, Mr. Boko? Okay, we'll got you back now. Does that suggest then that the governors don't need to resort to the National Assembly to alter or amend the Constitution to ensure that it's properly spelled out that they can go ahead and form state police?
Sorry, before I answer that, I was also saying that you know that being in the Constitution, it is in the exclusive list.
Oh dear.
So we both did concurrent list.
Okay, we'll keep losing you. Go ahead now.
Yes, can also be moved into the concurrent legislative list. And if that is by constitutional amendment, if it is moved into the concurrent legislative list, it enables the police, the states, to also make legislations with regards to that. But as it stands today, you cannot do that unless there's a constitutional amendment. It requires a constitutional, either a constitutional amendment, moving it, the item, I think under item 45 of the Constitution of the exclusive legislative list, moving it into concurrent concurrent list, in which circumstance even the states have powers to also make such legislation. You can do that. In the alternative, you can do a devolution of power so that there's without necessarily amending the Constitution, they can statutorily delegate powers to the states to make such laws. So either way, you can, and that is my answer to that question.
Kimberlin asked you the other time about the way in which we should go about this in terms of the governors. Does that mean that the governors cannot in any way or significantly rely on members of the National Assembly to make significant adjustments to foster peace in their communities?
The problem with relying on the members of National Assembly is that you still talk about the constitutional amendment. And of course, as it stands today, to still amend the Constitution, you need the assent of the President. And then you can also see that even the President has a veto power. So there's still going to be a problem. look at the composition of the National Assembly and see whether those clamoring for police, state police, will be enough in terms of number or majority number to be able to ensure the passage of that at the National Assembly. Mind you that even the amendment of the Constitution requires that you go to, depending on the nature of the amendment that is required, you may still need to go to all the houses of assembly of the states, of every state, and ensure you obtain 2/3 of the House of Assembly of the states. So the states cannot easily deal with issues of the police unless there's a legislation that is, as a constitutional. But what they are free to do, in my view, is that they are free to establish security framework like they have Amoteku, Ebubago, and all that. They have that power because the agencies that are setting up are agencies that will only complement the police. There are agencies that will help the police to curb crime. There are agencies that will only help the police to ensure that criminals are easily detected and then arrested. So what they normally do is when they discover criminals, they can help the police or take them to the police arrest them and then prosecute them. After all, the power private persons to arrest is also known to our law. Administration of Criminal Justice Act enables or allows even private persons to arrest. So the states, with the framework of vigilante framework, as long as such does not run in conflict with the statutory powers of the police, as long as it merely helps the police to curb crime and criminality, that is still allowable in law. And
all right, just one more thing as we wind down on this. Today, the public hearings of amending the Constitution will happen in different states. The committee kicking off on that one. But we've heard very great senior legal minds saying that the National Assembly cannot come up with the kind of resolve or resolution or constitution that the people want. What is your thinking about that? Do we need a new constitution? Is this the way to go about it? What should we be doing?
Thank you very much. My thinking is that, these things can be examined from my perspective, two different perspectives. There is this school of thought that strongly believes, and I think I also agree with them, that if you look at the Constitution itself, it creates an impression that we gave that Constitution to ourselves, we the people of Nigeria. We did not. And then if you go further down into that same Constitution, you will see where he even stated that, so as to ensure that we live in freedom, equity, and justice. Are we really equality and justice? Are we really in tandem? Are we really complying with that? No. Now, can you, looking at that, you cannot easily agree that the National Assembly can, on their own, propel the amendment of this Constitution and amend it. Therefore, for them, the better view would be to have a national conference where the people's representatives will come and then agree on the totality of all this and see how best we can come up with a better constitution. That is a strong one. That is a strong one, because the National Assembly, for me, yes, much as they are the representatives of the people, but truly speaking, in reality and practice and practicality, do they really represent the interest of the people of Nigeria? There may be certain nationalities, and indeed, there are certain nationalities that have no or strong representative even at the National Assembly. So you see that it still requires a situation where a national conference will be the guiding principle. Let us invoke a national conference. People sit down, look at all this, critically look at the constitution, and come up with a totally new constitution. Because this constitution was foisted on us by the military. I'm sure the constitution was made within a very short interval. So you can see that the problems are so many problems in that constitution. Look at the federal character provision. So many, look at the veto power of the president. So that even when you amend, he can always frustrate you. So many things in the constitution that have problems. So for me, I am convinced that the best thing is to have a national conference. I will not, yes, but the constitution says the House National Assembly can do all that. But with the nature of Nigeria as it is today, do you think that the National Assembly as constituted, even moving from one state to the other, will be able to meet the yearnings of the people? I don't think it will. For me, right. I believe.
All right, and Mr. Emeka Okpoko, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you for your time this morning. We'll be right back.
Well, indeed, that tragedy which occurred on Friday, taking the lives of senior military officers and crew, including the late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Matahiru, continues to be the focus of our discussion this morning. And we're being joined by retired Air Vice Marshal Bolahon Adekunle, who is a former Chief of Policy and Plans, Chief of Training and Operations at the headquarters, NAF, a former Residential Air Fleet Safety Officer, and also a former Fleet Operations Officer of the Presidential Air Fleet. General, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm sure that you were also very disturbed by the tragedy which saw the lives of the senior military officers and crew losing their lives in that particular incident. And maybe you have been able to, I don't know, examine, I don't know if you've questioned what could have gone wrong with this particular flight. We understand that, yes, the weather was bad. They were scheduled to land in an airstrip somewhere, and then later on changed their minds and came to land at the Kaduna airport. Sadly, that did not go down as planned, and that's what led to the tragedy. Have you been able to, think about what you think could have gone wrong causing this particular accident?
Again, thank you for having me, Mokwe. I want to start by praying for the repose of the souls of all the gentlemen, officers, and airmen that we have, and soldiers that we have lost in this very horrendous incident. I'll tell you, I haven't thought about anything since that day. And the reason is that I know for a fact, right from my days in the service up till now, that the Nigerian Air Force is expending a lot of money, time, and energy on a very robust safety management program, which is designed to do nothing but prevent incidents like this from happening. Like I said, the loss of our colleagues, especially the generals and the airmen, it's very, very heartbreaking, but flying carries some inherent risks. There's nothing we can do about the risks involved with flying. The records that have been made available to me indicate that first the airplane took off and was headed to Kaduna military base. This is a standard runway. Used to be Kaduna airports in the 60s and 70s before the Kaduna International Airport was built. So this is not just one airstrip anywhere. This is Kaduna, old Kaduna runway, now inherited by the Air Force. Their destination was Kaduna Air Force Base. Unfortunately, as they approached, the information I have is to the effect that Tower informed them there was a storm moving in. Now, if you are an observer of weather, especially at this time of the year, you will see that storms usually move in the evenings, early in the morning and the evenings, and they usually flow in a northeast to southwesterly direction. So if you know the direction of the Kaduna military runway relative to the Kaduna International Airport, you will know that any storm that passes over the Kaduna Airport, Kaduna military runway, I beg your pardon, is likely to eventually, pass over the Kaduna International Airport. So, heading for Kaduna Air Force Base and having been told that they couldn't get in there, of course, as competent pilots, they will have filed the Kaduna Civil as their alternate, weather alternate, in case they won't be able to land at the Air Force Base. They headed for their planned alternate. And there was an aircraft that had taken off earlier out of Kaduna Civil, headed for Zaria. That aeroplane could also not land in Zaria. It was told to turn back, and it landed just before they were to land. They landed, but for some reason, they couldn't keep the aircraft on the ground, and then we ended up with this very unfortunate situation. Why I'm concerned about saying too much about what has happened is that first and foremost, the rules of air accident investigation demand that we save as little as possible, so that the job of the Air Accident Investigation Board, which will eventually investigate this, will be seen to be unbiased, impartial, and not prejudiced. There's so much negative information flowing all over the place. People have said things that make sense. They've said the plausible. They've said the outright ridiculous. We need to bear in mind that we are dealing with the officers and men of Nigerian armed forces.
Indeed, that's why, there's a lot of concern, and rightly so too, because I'm sure the people of Nigeria are concerned about, losing so many people in so many tragedies in such a little time. Thankfully, the black box of this aircraft has been retrieved, and a lot of Nigerians will be looking forward to investigation. We understand that it's not usual for the Accident Investigation Bureau to investigate military matters, but they have been invited in this instance. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I suspect that the Chief of Air Staff himself, who is a qualified flight safety officer from the same institution in Pakistan where I was trained, wants to be as transparent as possible in this investigation, because it involves, first and foremost, like you said, top-level military officers, and then it has invoked a lot of passion and emotions across the land. To know the former Chief of Army Staff is to love him. Ebullient, confident, self-assured general. His confidence radiated and, impacted on people around him. So no one would love to lose that kind of person. So I understand that, I get it. But the officers who were involved, the pilots, the crew, they didn't go home. I mean, they didn't go on a planned journey of no return. They didn't leave their homes that day with their, family members. The captain was newly married, or one of them was newly married, from information available to me. They didn't plan to leave their family members, permanently. So this was an accident.
Indeed. Indeed. So that's why we're asking the question. I mean, I think the frequency also is something that has called a lot of attention. The fact that this year alone, we've lost 3 military aircrafts. There are huge questions as to the frequency. I mean, if this were happening in civil aviation, by now, a lot of people will be going by road. So to assure even the people, their family members, that it wasn't that their lives were unduly risked, because there have been a lot of questions around whether monies have been provided for maintenance of aircraft, whether they were in tip-top shape, whether there have been a lot of questions. I'm sure you must have heard some of them. What is your experience in how aircraft are maintained in the military, especially now that we're in the middle of a war with Boko Haram?
Thank you very much for that question. The Beechcraft, though a multi-purpose aeroplane, is maintained in line with civil aviation regulations. Its last inspection, from details available, was done on the 19th of April. The last heavy inspection that was done on the aeroplane was duly certified, good to go, ready to fly. And it had done so many, flights before the ill-fated one, that we are discussing. Now, aircraft maintenance is not like you take your car to your mechanic and they remove one screw, they cannot remember where they kept it. Everything you do in aircraft maintenance is done by the book. When you see them going through an aircraft maintenance, you see a book this big. That book says, remove screw so, and place it so. That's all you have on one page. Do you know why? To ensure that nothing goes wrong. Unfortunately, no matter how careful you are, no matter how careful you try to be, no matter how competent the personnel involved are, once in a while things go wrong. 3 accidents in the last 6 months or thereabouts is a lot. And I get it. I'm also bothered about it. But you have to bear in mind that there was an Alpha jet involved. An Alpha jet that was flying in hostile territory. Those of us who are in the military, we don't know that no matter how hard you pray that things don't go wrong, when you are in war, things are likely to go wrong. When you are flying in hostile territory, you are exposed to enemy fire. I do not have the report of the accident investigation that investigated the Alpha jet crash, but the fact remains that it was flying in hostile territory. Anything could have gone wrong. But the 2 aeroplanes that were doing what you can consider near civil assignments, one had an engine failure. Circumstances are different. The management of that engine failure up to the point that the aeroplane crashed is what I have not been briefed about. But again, the Air Accident Investigation Board, or whatever board that the Air Force sets up, will investigate it, and then the report will be made known with a view to ensuring that the likelihood of what has just happened is repeating itself. The likelihood of this thing that just happened repeating itself is minimized, if not completely eradicated. And the Air Force has, in every of its units, safety management programs that are designed to do this. Every Air Force unit has a safety officer attached to it. Every operational unit has a safety officer who has gone, apart from being a qualified pilot, who has gone to study systems and processes that will ensure that all things being equal, all human shortcomings removed, accidents are not likely to occur. But like I said before we started this conversation, the day the Wright brothers chose to fly, we started defying nature, and that is the truth. God didn't want us to fly. If he wanted us to fly, he would have given us wings. But we have chosen to fly, and many things have been in place by aircraft manufacturers, system operators and designers to ensure that the likelihood of this happening is minimized. But once in a while, these things do happen, and it's unfortunate that we've had this sequence in this short order over the last 6 months or so. I am sure the Chief of Air Staff is as concerned, if not more concerned than you and I, to ensure that things like this don't happen again. In that light, I understand just yesterday, he has just set up a board to carry out a systems audit of all our operational units. It doesn't get better than that.
I mean,
it doesn't show concern.
Because indeed, I'm sure that even the airmen will be very concerned about the aircraft that they are flying. This kind of accident, could also, deal a big blow on their own confidence as well. And I'm sure that some of these things, much as it is for the benefit of Nigerians to also have confidence in the Air Force, it could also further boost the confidence of those who will operate those aircraft. Nonetheless, there have also been questions as to the level of experience of the airmen. Do you want to comment on their level of experience and their rank vis-a-vis the VIPs that they were carrying? You have carried VIPs yourself.
I am worried that we Nigerians are getting unduly emotional about this. I understand where it is coming from. It's because of our deep sense of loss. We are all grieving, we are hurting. I understand that. The captain of this aircraft had 2,450 flying hours. As a flight lieutenant, our generation was supposedly, flying in the golden days of the Nigerian Air Force. How many of us are 2,450 hours as flight lieutenants? Flight lieutenants? And in which Air Force is a flight lieutenant a small boy to fly? That is the rank bracket between flight lieutenant and squadron leader. That's when you are going to do the flying that would define your career in the Air Force. By the time you are wing commander, you are already commanding, either a squadron or a wing or something. So you are already getting involved in administration. But the flying, the critical mass of your flying that will define you, that they will say, oh, this officer can be entrusted with social assignment. You are going to do all that flying as flight lieutenant, squadron leader. I, as a flying officer, was already flying presidents of this country. 1983, I was flying President Shehu Shagari. I flew him from Kaduna to Mina in Edonia 128. Nobody questioned my rank. Our incumbent president and commander-in-chief, I was attached to him in my degree when we were doing this operation to clear away the Chadians who had invaded our territory in the northeast. Up until 4 months before he became head of state, I was a flying officer. Flying officer. 3 good years before I was even considered for promotion to flight lieutenant. I was flying a man who went on to become my head of state 4 months after. I understand that we are hurting. I understand we are grieving. But let's not destroy that which holds us together. Let's not say and do things that will destroy the confidence of the Air Force in itself, the confidence of the other services in the Air Force, the confidence of the services in themselves. Because whether we like it or not, the Nigerian Air Force and the other services must continue to cooperate. The Nigerian Armed Forces must interoperate in the overall interest of our national security.
General, it's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Early this morning. Retired Air Vice Marshal Bolahon Adekunle is the former Chief of Policy and Plans, Chief of Training and Operations at the headquarters of the Nigerian Air Force, former Presidential Fleet Safety Officer, and a former Fleet Operations Officer of the Presidential Air Fleet. Well, that's all we'll have to leave it for this segment, and as well for Sunrise Daily. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Do have a wonderful day, and please stay safe.
Yeah, so Kashmir, Ifeanyi, and the rest of them, we see your messages. We'll take them later. Thank you for sending them. I'm Chain Belinuso. Goodbye.